Presented in partnership with Exquisite Timepieces.
What are the 10 best dive watches from under $100 all the way up to and even exceeding $10,000? Now look, I've owned well more than a dozen divers over the years, and I've probably had nearly 100 or even more on my channel since I started doing this YouTube thing. And I thought, today might be a good time to do a dive watch retrospective. But first, a quick shout out to my channel sponsor, Exquisite Timepieces, for loaning me the majority of the watches that you're going to see here on today's video. They are my local brick-and-mortar authorized dealer of many, many brands featured here today. So yeah, thanks again to the guys over at Exquisite Timepieces, including Joe McHale and of course Tim Richardson. And yeah, the rest of the crew over there as well. Thanks guys, I appreciate all the help and support. So let's start at the most entry level, and what we're talking about is $49. At least that's the current sale price on Amazon as of the filming of this video. And what I think is probably the best value watch at that price is the Casio MDV106. That is absolutely my top nominee for the title of affordable divers. Now, I did consider the Invicta Pro Diver here because it's actually a really good value for money at around $50 or so. And you get a watch with an automatic movement. But I think that the Casio is just overall a better watch, even if it is running a quartz-based movement. Now, that said, I can't think of too many watches that you can get for this price that come with 100 meters of water resistance, a screw-down crown, an elapsed time diving bezel, and of course, the reliability and the brand history that you get from Casio. And, a couple of other cool things about it. It comes in a wide range of colorways. It has different strap and bracelet options, which does, of course, affect the price. But if you want a basic, bare-bones beater that you can depend on, and it's the standard model with the Casio resin strap that I would say you can't beat for the money. Now, if you want to move up a touch and start looking at watches around $100 or so, there's a lot of new options that present themselves. And this was a pretty hard choice for me because the watch that I wound up picking is actually one that I don't really like. I'm going to go with the Vostock Amphibia for my top choice at $100. And I will say that it is a little bit hard to find a legit dive watch like this at this price. But if I'm being, completely transparent, I do think that these watches are pretty ugly. It's just not for me in terms of style and substance. That said, the Scuba Dude model, it is my favorite model of all of the Vostock Amphibias that I've seen. And it's going for $115 right now on Amazon, and you really can't beat that price when you talk about the features and the specs that you get for it. And yes, despite me not being a fan of the looks or the designs of these watches, a Russian-made automatic watch with 200 meters of water resistance and admittedly legendary brand heritage, yeah, that's an amazing value, and it's going to make my top pick for the $100 price tier without a doubt. So in the $200 to $300 price range, things start to get a little bit messy. And look, I mean messy in a good way, because the amount of choices really starts to open up here. And there are tons of mainstream brands like Seiko, Citizen, and Orient to choose from, along with nearly an unlimited range of micro brands with awesome watch models as well. In the past, I would have said that the Seiko SKX009 would have been my number one absolutely obvious pick for this price point. Not only was it one of the best watches from that price, but it was one of the most iconic and most awesome watches ever made, in my humble opinion. But for some reason, Seiko decided, and yeah, for some goofy reason, I guess I should say, they decided to discontinue that watch, and they have as of yet done an official, true reissue. Now, they do have a line of Seiko 5 sports models in more or less the same case shape with a lot of the same overall designs as the SKX model, and the Seiko 5 even comes with a better movement, if I'm being fair. But they removed all the heavy-hitting diver features, so I'm reluctant to put something like the SRPD55 in this spot, even though I probably should. I have reviewed that watch in the past, and it's a cool watch. I do really like it. But no, I think I will nominate the Orient Komatsu for the top watch of the $200 to $300 price tier. unlike the Seiko 5, it actually does still have a screw-down crown. It still has 100 meters of water resistance, and it's a more legitimate contender for the title of a true diver. Now, there is a handful of other Orient dive watches that you could probably interchangeably replace with the Komatsu. But being as this is the one that I've had the most recent hands-on experience with, the Komatsu is what I will make as my one-and-done pick for this tier. Now, hey, before we move on to the next watch, go ahead and do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, and maybe the thumbs up button while you're at it. It's actually kind of hard to believe, but I get hundreds of thousands of views every month, but only about 16% of you guys are actually subscribed to my channel. So if you're watching right now, you're probably not subscribed. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. With that said, I'm happy to report that the number of subscribers or people that are subscribers that are watching my videos is going way up this month. So I have to thank everyone that has been hitting that button. I do really appreciate it. Now, moving up to a range of, I don't know, let's say $500 to $750, things get kind of difficult for me. And it's because I don't really have a favorite diver at this price point. My favorite watch around this price is certainly the Hamilton Khaki Field, but that's not a diver. Now, actually, come to think of it, years and years ago, I did try a Hamilton Khaki Navy Scuba because I was such a big fan of the Khaki Field, and the price of the Scuba was around $500. So yeah, I did kind of like that watch. I did a video on it, and as you can tell by the video quality, it was a really long time ago. I had this one back in 2017. I liked the Navy Scuba when I had it, but it was never 100% a keeper watch for me. It was a little bit too thick, and it was a little bit too big, and that particular model just never really worked out. Now, these days, they do have a new version of the Khaki Navy Scuba, and it's one that I would really like to try out, and I might recommend it, but number one, it's a bit more expensive, and number two is I just don't have any experience with it. But I do think that the watch is really cool, and if any of you guys have one, let me know if you would maybe be interested in lending it to me for a video. You can always email me, justbluefish@gmail.com, because I would love to do a review on that watch. But anyway, that brings us back to trying to pick a watch at this price point, and I'm going to go with what I think is going to amount to being a little bit of an unpopular, possibly a little bit of a controversial choice. But it's both a watch that I have had some experience with, and it's one that I do really like in a lot of ways, despite not liking it in every way. What we're talking about is the Seiko SNJ025, the Arnie model. It's a solar quartz diver with a hybrid ani-digi display that, although I do find a bit too large for me personally, I do love the design. There's just, I don't know, a few watches that scream 1980s aesthetics to me, and while I'm sure a lot of you guys out there probably hate the looks and the styles that came out of the 1980s, personally, I absolutely love it. And watches like the Seiko Arnie and the H558 that it's based on, along with other 1980s classics like my all-time favorite Casio G-Shock Square models, yeah, I don't know, those types of designs just resonate with me for some reason. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a child of the 80s. Now, I'm curious, what do you guys think is the best diver in that $500 to $750 price range? Because like I said, I had a lot of trouble making this pick, but in the end, I don't mind the one that I selected. Then we get up to the $1,000 price tier option, and it's honestly starting to get crazy. I don't know, no matter what I pick, I think that I'm probably going to upset the majority of people watching this. They're going to be disappointed or unhappy with the pick, and that's because there are just so many options between $1,000 and $1,500 to consider. My first thought was to go with the Christopher Ward Trident Pro 300. And yeah, that's an awesome watch. I actually had the C60 Trident Pro 600 on the channel a while back, and it was great. I was super impressed, and I've always been really impressed with Christopher Ward. But that won't be my pick here. Now, I recently did a video on the orange dial Doxa Sub 200, and for just a hair over $1,000, I think that that's another really good option to look at in this price range. I like the design, I like the quality, the fit and finish, everything on it was pretty excellent. I guess the bracelet's clasp could have been a little bit better, but I'm not gonna split hairs. It was a nice watch. But again, that's not my pick. Now, there's a bunch of watches from brands like Mito, Certina, Tissot, Longines, and all of the other Swatch Group brands that are around plus or minus $1,000, but I'm not going to be picking any of those for this category either. No, today I'm going to go with probably what will amount to being somewhat of a predictable selection if you know me at all and if you've been watching my videos. And that is the watch that's based on something that I really love, the Seiko 62 Moss, one of my all-time favorite diver designs. The one in particular that I'm talking about is the Seiko SPB 143, or honestly any of the SPB models in the 1965 Divers Reimagined lineup. Now, at $1,200, this watch is a little steeply priced. I will agree with that criticism. I've voiced it myself, and I've heard a lot of you guys say it. But in today's day and age, I mean, look, what isn't a little bit more expensive than we would like, especially when it comes to wristwatches? That's just the new normal. That said, while it may not be my super value pick, it is a super awesome design, and again, one of my favorites. I love the case shape, I love how it wears on the wrist, I love the dial, and the design of the hour hands, the markers on the dial, the bezel, really everything. Seiko really nailed this one when it comes to making a good-looking diver. And yeah, I do acknowledge that the watch is not perfect. I mean, I'm not a fan of Seiko's 4R or 6R movements in general. In my experience, they've been rather inaccurate. The bracelet on this one, it's decent, but the clasp certainly isn't a home run. But I will put up with those shortcomings and the slightly high price because it's one of the nicest looking divers on this list. Okay, now we're at the tier of watches over $2,000, but under $3,000. And my pick at this level is actually going to be a pretty easy one for me, but I do want to give an honorable mention to Manta, actually. The $2,500 Manta Ocean King definitely deserves and it needs a shout out in my opinion. I did a video on this watch 4 years ago, roughly, plus or minus. And to this day, I'm still very impressed with what they did with that watch. Now back then, the watch was actually just a hair under $2,000 and it was one of the first watches that I ever came across that's not an ultra high-end luxury segment watch to have a toolless adjustable clasp. And yeah, I was impressed with that, not to mention everything else. But my pick for in this 2K to 3K range is going to be the Oris Divers 65. Yeah, surprising, I know that I didn't pick the Oris Aquis, and what can I say? In my opinion, the Diver 65 is the better Oris diver. And by better, I mean that I like it better. I'm not arguing that it's technically better than the Aquis, but I don't care about the specs or the features in this case. I like the style, I like the design of the Diver 65 much more than the Aquis. I like that there are a variety of models to choose from as well, and a variety of dial configurations and designs. The Momotaro model is one that I've reviewed, and with its applied hour markers and its bronze accents, it looks awesome. But the simple, classic printed dial on this model really resonates with me as well, and it looks great under the domed sapphire crystal. So yeah, the Oris Diver 65 is my pick in that $2,000 to $3,000 price range. Now, my last few picks are going to be really easy for me, and they're probably going to be really predictable for you guys, so I'm going to fly through them relatively quickly. In the $4,000 to $5,000 range, my pick is what I think is the best value luxury diver on the market, the Tudor Black Bay 58. Now, the Black Bay 58 isn't just what I would consider the best value luxury diver, though. I think I might call it my favorite diver, period, if you can believe that. With one tiny exception. I've never really been much of a fan of the Snowflake hour hand. I have, however, warmed up to it a little bit over the years, and if I ever did wind up to buy one of these watches for my collection, the Snowflake hands wouldn't stop me. But I would prefer a different hour hand if I was given the option. Still, I really like the watch. And other than that, this watch, it really is pretty much perfect in my opinion. It's a great price at least relative to what other watch brands are offering in that luxury segment. The quality is really good as well, and I think you get great features and great specs for the price. But more than all of that, man, I really love the size of this watch, and I love how it wears on the wrist and how it looks. I think it's fantastic. So yeah, my favorite watch under $5,000 is definitely going to be the Tudor Black Bay 58. That watch is a home run. Another easy choice and an obvious choice is going to be the Omega Diver that I'm picking for under the $10,000 price point. And I know there's a bunch of you guys who are going to argue that I should be picking the Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean model. And look, yeah, the Planet Ocean is an outstanding watch. It's debatably better than the Seamaster Pro Divers or the Heritage model Seamasters. But for me, and to my preferences, the Planet Ocean, it's just too big, it's too bulky, it's too much of a watch, it's too large and too thick, and it's just too much for me. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I still respect the hell out of the watch, I just can't personally pull it off. At least not the full-size model. And for that reason, my pick is going to be, for the watch in the price range of under $10,000, the Omega Seamaster Pro Diver 300. At $5,900, you really cannot beat this watch. It punches way, way above its weight class, and many would argue that it's better than watches that cost nearly double the price. The fit and the finishing is impeccable, the dial and the hands are awesome, even the movement visible through the case display back looks amazing. Now, while I said the Tudor Black Bay 58 was a good value, and I stand by that, for $4,000 it is a really good value. The Omega Seamaster is probably the best value in luxury watches if I'm being objective. This watch is, again, better than watches costing thousands of dollars more than its $5,900 price tag. And Omega, thankfully, doesn't play stupid games with the Seamaster like Rolex does, meaning you can actually walk into a watch dealer and buy this watch whenever you want it. And, it's actually available, and Omega doesn't try to hype it up with faux scarcity and availability tactics. That's important to me. So yeah, I'm sure it was no surprise that my pick for my favorite diver under roughly $10,000 is going to be the Seamaster. And yes, speaking of no surprises, who can guess what my pick for the favorite watch at $10,000 is? It's not going to be a big shock. Of course, it is the Rolex Submariner. And no doubt people will complain that I selected the Submariner over the Sea Dweller, kind of like the Seamaster over the Planet Ocean. Look, I just like the Submariner better. I own that watch. It's my favorite watch that I've ever owned. You can't go wrong with either. Of course, the Sea Dweller is without a doubt a great watch, but a lot like the Planet Ocean, it's just too big and bulky. It's too thick and impractical for me and my lifestyle. Now, I've owned this Submariner for quite a while. We're talking like 6 years, probably going on 7 years, as a matter of fact. I got this one in the fall of 2017, and that was back in the good old days when you could walk into a Rolex AD, see a watch in the watch case, ask for a discount, and you could buy it. I actually got this watch for $8,000 out the door. I think retail prices back then for this model was $8,550, and when you factor in tax and everything else, I effectively got a 10% discount. Now those days, the good old days, are gone for sure. You can't do that anymore. But anyway, yeah, when it comes to luxury divers, is Rolex technically the best? No, it's not like the best, and like I said, the Omega watches are punching well above their weight class. They're competing with and probably beating this watch, and they're doing it for a lot less money. But with that said, you don't necessarily have to make the best watch to be seen as the best watch, and it's not about which watch is technically superior, it's about which watch you like better. The Submariner doesn't need to be the better watch for me to like that watch better. There's a lot of different things that factor into subjective favor, and for me, this is the best watch, meaning it's the watch that I like the best. So despite nitpicking over what makes a watch better than the other and why we might like one watch better than another, what we can probably all agree on is that Rolex is more or less the hallmark of luxury dive watches, and that's thanks to decades of well-planned and well-placed marketing campaigns and the perception by many that Rolex is the king of the hill. Now, does all of that really matter? No, I guess it doesn't really matter. Most of us buy and wear watches that we like, regardless of what other people think, and regardless of whether or not technical specs and feature lists are better or worse than one watch or another. So yeah, for me, for my money, the Rolex Submariner is the one. Now that brings us to our last watch for the list and our last price tier. We're talking about divers at $15,000 and up. That's a ton of money for a dive watch. And really, I think there's only one logical choice here. That's the OG Granddaddy diver that some of us love and some of us hate, but I think we can all agree it deserves its place on this list as maybe the best high-end luxury diver. Of course, what we're talking about is the Blancpain 50 Fathoms. And coming in at $15,700 on a strap or over $18,500 on a bracelet, it is absolutely one heck of an expensive dive watch. And that doesn't even account for models with complications or models that come in precious metals. I mean, you can get a rose gold 50 fathoms with a flyback chronograph that costs over $40,000. If you want to go totally crazy, how about you go with a white gold model with a tourbillon complication coming in at over $150,000? But sure, for us mere mortals, yeah, the basic 50 fathoms diver in titanium on a strap or a bracelet is often viewed as a Grail watch. The watch that you could add to your collection after years of being in the hobby, and the one that might even be the exit watch that retires your collection career, because where else does a person go from here? For me personally, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this watch. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate it. I just don't love the design cues. I think that the quality and the fit and finishing and the production as a whole is absolutely outstanding. It is great. But when I see it, when I look at it and look at those design details and the decisions that were made, these are from a generation that I wasn't a part of, and it doesn't look timeless or classic to me. Kind of looks somewhat dated. Yeah, I guess sometimes, and for some people, that's probably a good thing. I mean, I spoke about loving design cues from the 1980s earlier in this video. Those types of watches do speak to me. But in this case, it doesn't really speak to me. At least not on a level where I could see myself spending over $15,000. But for the people that do love it, and there are plenty of you out there, I can absolutely respect the decision to add this historically important, significant, and amazing quality timepiece to your collection. It's absolutely top-notch. All right, guys, well, there you have it, my top 10 divers at just about every single price point from under $100 all the way over $10,000. I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed making it. And if you're still here, definitely you should do me that solid and hit the subscribe button. You watched this whole video. At this point, you kind of owe me. Anyway, I also want to thank my channel partner and my sponsor, Exquisite Timepieces, for loaning me many of the watches featured on this episode. Without them and without their support, videos like this would never have been possible. So again, thanks to Joe McHale, Tim Richardson, and the rest of the crew over there at Exquisite Timepieces. Now, with all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up for today. Say thanks again, and until the next one, bye now.